The following broadcast is intended for mature audiences. These are real people sharing very real, deeply personal experiences. This content may be considered triggering for others and for those who are sharing. The chat room is a privilege intended for discussions and sharing. You are not being asked to agree, but you are being asked to stay civil and refrain from personal attacks. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back to Am I Mental? A live podcast where people share real stories about how life impacts mental health and mental health impacts life. I'm your host, E. With us tonight is our co-host, C.
Hello.
And our guest co-host slash guest, probably, Sarah.
Hello.
So, we got abandoned. I already came up with a solution, so hopefully we could stop being abandoned as often late as we have been. But yeah, so a couple things I want to throw out there really fast is when you... the best way to be informed that we're going live, join our Discord. Please join the Discord. There's an announcements channel. Every time I'm about to go live with the episode, I go in there and I throw out a, hey everybody, we're going live and here's a link. That, or please set a reminder, that we're going to go live. One thing that we did finally decide on, and now that we're halfway through the season, we are moving the podcast to a new date and time. We will be going Saturdays, 5 p.m. Pacific time, or 8 p.m. Eastern time. Start an hour earlier to help everybody else out, especially on the East Coast. You guys... If we do a 3-hour episode, you guys are going to bed at midnight. That's just kind of, that's mean. So, yeah, and if you want to help us out, by all means, share episodes, especially ones that you think will resonate with people. And, that's probably the best way to, just with the word of mouth. Outside of that, if you really want to help us, you can always go to mimental.net/donate. There's a number of ways that you can go ahead and help out. We accept one-time payments. We accept a subscription where you choose how much you want to pay. We're not asking for any dollar amount. You just help us out. Every penny we get goes right back to the podcast. And we also have some merchandise. We do have a Teespring store. We need to get it updated. Bexy. So, not to throw anybody's name out there. But other than that, C. Starting a new job and graveyard shift. You want to talk about how that's been impacting you, because shift work is brutal.
It completely destroyed my sleep schedule, and my memory is even shittier than it was before.
It takes so long to adjust to.
It does.
I gotta work from 4 to 1 tomorrow and Saturday.
So is this like a rotating shift thing, or are you going to be set on just something you're not used to for a while?
For right now, it seems to be 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. So, those. But I have to work till 1 because I was off at Disney this week. So, yeah.
Nice. It is good to see and hear you.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I feel quite numb in some senses.
So are you waking up at midnight then?
No. I wake up around, if it's 3, 2, and if it's 4, 3.
You work from home?
No, I work at a bakery.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
So
you don't
give yourself much time. I take 2 hours to wake up, so... I would not be able to do that.
Well, C's still young. C can do that. I remember I used to be able to do that. Be like, I have to be at working at say 4. All right, I'll get up at 3:30. Just quickly throw stuff together and eat on my way.
I can't do 3:30. That would be way too close.
Yeah, but I mean, I also when I was young enough, everything was within a couple miles. Because I lived in a very small town.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do long commutes.
it's not as bad when you work from home either, because worst case scenario, you wake up late, you just roll out of bed and go right to your desk.
I used to have my desk in my bedroom, so I'd be like, wake up 2 minutes before I have to clock in.
Yeah.
Wow.
And actually, we just had a comment in the chat by a cat asking if we would consider using Patreon. I actually had set up Patreon initially, but they take such a huge chunk of what's donated. They take a pound of flesh. So we use Libra instead because their rate, they provide the same service, but they're international, unlike Patreon, which is very much a US based with. They do have some international, but it's not great. Where Libra is actually based in the EU, and their international currency exchange is amazing. So, yeah, that's why we use them. And Kat was just saying, never worked graveyard shift, but swing shift nearly killed me. I had a job. Let's see here. So, I worked 5 days. Sorry, I worked 4 days mornings, 1 day swing, and then 1 day midnight to noon. And then had 1 day off. It was horrible.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't do that. Like, I love nights, but I can't do the whole switching off all the time. I don't mind doing like 410s or even 312s, so like it's good. But I want it split up.
Yeah. No, what was funny is that this company, I eventually looked at the schedules. Okay, so I work 4 days and then 1 swing, and this other person works 4 swings in 1 day on the same days of the week. Can't we just swap that 1 swing in 1 day, please? That way it's 5 days for one person, 5 swings for the other, and the other person's like, yeah, please, because this swapping around sucks.
Well, and talk about your mental
imagine.
health, like not having any kind of predictable pattern, just having monkey wrench, because I get really absorbed into my work, and so if I don't have sort of a set schedule, then I never leave it behind, especially working from home. It's damn near impossible.
And then there was that place that Austin and I both worked where every 3 months you got a new schedule.
Wow.
Oh, and it was, you did shift bids based on your performance. And if you were the absolute top, you got to just pick your shift. Other than that, you just had to organize every shift in order and hope that you get something that you can live with. And then you get...
that and Christmas, because Christmas you have to come in at like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. And then you had like 2 weeks after the schedules are published to make you go to someone else to go, hey, I don't like this shift. Can I swap shifts with you? And hope that someone would be willing to swap shifts. Yeah, it was terrible. And then I moved into the enterprise realm, and it went
Sounds
to.
like it.
I moved into the enterprise area, and it was 6-month shifts, which not optimal, but still a lot better than 3 months.
Yeah, I'll say it's definitely thrown off my medication schedule as well.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. Yeah, when you have to depend on a med schedule, having your shifts bouncing around, ugh. And yeah, where I worked, the earliest shift started at 5, and the latest shift you got out at 8:30.
Wow.
Yeah, so there was a wide range. Then when I moved to the enterprise side of things, it was, you started at 6, latest shift got out at 6:30. Like, this I can live with, and I did 410s. I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. Only 3 possible start times. Really, really limited that whole, the moving around. Plus, it was every 6 months. The only thing that really changed then were the days that you worked.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I could go the rest of my life without ever having to deal with that again. That was crap.
Kat said she never worked graveyard shift, but swing shift nearly killed her. I love graveyard. I have it's hard for me to be awake during the day. My dad was a night owl. I've always been a night owl. My mom and sister are morning people. Like, we'd pass each other in the hallway, I'd be going to bed and they'd be getting up all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
And you both look at each other going,
I don't
freak.
understand morning people. Exactly. Yeah, and when it was just my mom and me, it was so hard to, because, I'm at the tail end of my day. I'm exhausted. She's getting up, all with her coffee, you want to talk, and I'm like, no, no, just I'm done, Mom. I'm going to bed. Or the other way around, I'm still awake, and she's like, I'm not 3 cups in. Get away from me.
Oh, speaking of coffee, so yeah, my wife actually gave me a nice gift. It's a cold brew pitcher thing. It has like this giant long cylinder filter. You just pour in your coffee grounds, seal it to the top, put in water.
Like an overnight thing?
Yep, you just put it in the refrigerator overnight.
Does it take the bitterness out? Because cold brew tea is awesome for that. I don't know if it's the same with coffee.
Yes, my particular coffee I have is ultra high calf, so it's really dark brew, really, really bold. Like when I brew it normally, I can't drink it straight, but cold brew, no problem. Yeah, so cold brew does definitely tone down the bitterness.
I don't know what's going on with me as I get older. Like, I'm way more sensitive to caffeine, so oddly enough, I had to switch to energy shots because, like, I still can't function without some sort of chemical intervention, but the B12 doesn't kill me nearly as much as all the caffeine does.
Well, considering I saw a stat once. It was something like 80% of Americans are vitamin deficient, mainly in the B vitamins, which is where things like...
Food is crap now.
Yeah. But
soil is crap or food is crap.
Yeah. But that's where things like the 5-Hour Energy come in nice because they do, like what you're doing right there. 5-Hour Energy. It's a amino acid and B vitamin complex boost with a little bit of caffeine. You can also get the caffeine free. And it's amazing just how powerful it is. It's like, oh my god, this is what it's like to actually have proper nutrition?
Well, and I just sip on it. Like, I didn't even know you could get it without caffeine, but I just take, like, little sips throughout the day, and then I'm cool, but otherwise I'm pretty much useless.
Yeah, one of the guys I used to work with, he never tried the 5-Hour Energy. This is back when my caffeine habit was, I should be dead level of caffeine habit. And we started our shifts at 4 a.m. because we both just like getting it out of the way. Just get the day done, you know? Even though I'm a night owl, I also have that work ethic of if I can start early, I will start early just to get out of the building faster. So he went and he got a 5-Hour Energy shot. And he's like, hey, check it out. And so I turned around because we were sitting, across a little hall in cubicles. And he went and took the shot. Like 2 minutes later, I get a message from him going, my face isn't numb, and I still have the $100 in my wallet. Are you sure this isn't cocaine?
That's hilarious. I was just thinking about it, sort of like, the whole legal speed addiction sort of thing. Like, if his like coffee tolerance is through the roof, or mine is like nil now. He makes these things called step charges, which the first time he gave me one, I felt like I was having a heart attack after like 5 minutes. I was like, oh my god, this can't be good for you. What did you give me? So yeah.
It's like not only is your heart beating, but your shoulders going along with the beating.
Exactly. And I'm like, I'm breathing okay. It's not a panic attack. What the hell's going on? Like, because my heart was just like...
So we got a little message from Kat here. I worked in Azusa and was driving westbound on the 10 freeway. This was several decades ago when 1 o'clock in the morning had fairly light traffic. That was a while ago. All of a sudden, there were bright headlights coming my way. Fortunately, we avoided each other and I got home safely. Parentheses wasn't referring to the incident, this incident about killing me. LOL, just the hours. Yeah. Basically, if you... Southern California, I swear. Like, you go on the 405. It doesn't matter what day of the week. Doesn't matter what hour of the day or night. You get by LAX, it's a parking lot. There's no such thing as light traffic anymore in that area. And I used to drive through LA once a month. I lived in San Diego at the time, and my parents lived up in the Ventura area. So every 2 weeks, they'd come and visit. It was like every 2 weeks, one would visit the other. So it's like my parents would come visit us. 2 weeks later, we'd go visit them. 2 weeks later, they'd come visit us. So we travel through that area all the time.
I've never been down there. I strictly since I moved here up in Northern California, but the whole 1 o'clock in the morning thing is shocking. My sister almost died doing shift work because, like I said, she's super morning person, and she was working night manager at a restaurant, but she couldn't sleep during the day when the sun was out, so she ended up like being so tired she fell asleep driving home and bounded into one of those like dividers, the big orange things filled with water. Damn near killed herself.
Wow.
Oof.
So I think you have to be compatible with your shift doing shift work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
I was just about to say, I went through something a little similar just like last week or so. I don't know, I was really tired it was gonna be a 4 a.m. shift, and I was driving. I rolled my windows down so the cold air would hit me. I blasted my music, but I still kept on dozing off. And then I noticed, holy shit, I'm falling asleep and I'm swerving into the other lane. Thank God no one's around me. And then I get into the parking lot and I'm like, okay, I'm fine. I'm gonna wake up now. It's fine.
I'm sure you were plenty awake after that.
Yeah.
at least for the
Yeah.
about 5 or 10 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So here's a trick that my dad learned in the Army that he taught me, and it really works. Especially if like you're about to go like take a drive. When you wake up in the morning, don't go pee. If you have to pee while you're driving to work, you will stay awake.
Okay.
It really helps. Make yourself uncomfortable. Roll down the windows, make it
That's
cold.
actually pretty clever.
Yeah, when you have to pee,
'Cause that
it's
whole
hard to
cold
sleep.
thing and all that, and the music loud does not always work. But I bet the pee thing would.
Yeah, that one I will deliberately, I will caffeinate up before a trip just so that way I have full bladder about an hour into the drive, and then I don't drink very much after that, so I stay with a maintained full bladder and not get to the point of, oh god, I'm about to piss myself. But yeah.
Yeah, because that'll make you drive off the road too.
Yeah,
And
to piss.
Yeah. Well, and military guys often have a lot of those. I remember reading regs years ago having to do with like the legal requirements or the legal ramifications of being in a military, because they have to stay up for sometimes days on end, and so they're essentially not responsible for their actions after a certain point. Like they can't be held legally responsible.
Yep.
Even after I think it's like 48 hours or something like that.
It's because what happens is that your brain starts doing micro shutdown and micro sleep. Like a section of your brain will shut down for a while, then another section will shut down for a
Your
while.
logic and reasoning goes all to hell after a certain amount of time too. Like,
yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. I mean, I have a friend who was an MP for the Marines. Then 9/11 happened, so of course he was standing at guard posts with, heavy rifles for 24 to 48 hours at a time. And he's like, you learn how to sleep standing up. You learn how to salute in your sleep. You learn how to check ID in your sleep. And you don't wake up unless there's an ID that doesn't belong.
yeah, I've had some jobs like that where you learn to sleep at opportune moments.
Yeah. So
sometimes they're more convenient though. Night audit's really good for that because you can, like, if somebody rings the bell, it'll wake you up, so I'd sleep on the folding table and with the phone right by my head, and I just set an alarm for like right before day shift came in.
Actually, what's
It's
funny is that
polyphasic sleep.
Bo was just talking. Yeah, I was just saying. I was just getting ready to bring that up. So the polyphasic sleep is basically you stay awake for 3 hours and 40 minutes, and then you sleep for 20 minutes, and repeat, and do that all day, every day. And it's a little rough to start, but once you get into that rhythm, you're just bam. When it's time to sleep, you sleep. But unfortunately, you have to plan your life around it because
I was gonna say, what if it's an inopportune time to sleep?
yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Your body goes too bad. It's brutal, but you get more hours out of your day. Like I did it for a little over a year and a half around, and my work schedule was such a way that I would take my sleep get up, go to work for a little bit, go on a break, and we did 20-minute breaks. So I would just pass out for my break, wake up, work, lunch, eat, pass out, wake up, work, break, pass out, wake up, work, end of shift, pass out, wake up, go home.
I feel like my body would actually be pretty well adapted to that. There have been times where I've had to be up for, if I'm up for over 24 hours, my body does not react to it well at all. And I will start basically falling asleep, standing up, sitting down, wherever for, 10, 20 minutes at a time. And I can function that way for, quite a matter of time. But after about 36 hours, my body doesn't give me a choice about it. So I feel like I would probably adapt pretty well to that.
So there is a website I just found. It's called sleepfoundation.org. I don't know how reputable they are. I haven't had a chance to vet them. But they wrote an article that was updated August 25th of this year about polyphasic sleep schedule, the benefits and the risks. I'm going to put that up in the Discord. Because, yeah, that's something that people might want to look into, might want to try. I loved it.
Yes.
But then I discovered I really like long sleep.
I was always an 8-hour a night person. And then, when you have kids, especially if you're a mom, like post-sleeping or something, it just, I don't think I've gotten, with the exception of a couple of occasions, like being sick or something, or occasionally Austin just sleep in, I'll, take care of whatever. I didn't have more than 8 hours at a time for the first, 5 years of his life. So you have to adapt.
Yeah, so with that polyphasic sleep, you wind up getting 22 and a half hours of being awake with an hour and 40 minutes of sleep, something like that. Because it's...
And this is just your default? You don't have to take a day and...
No. Once you adjust, it took me about a week to adjust. And, I mean, it's hard at first because you really have to dedicate yourself to that schedule. But then after that, it's quick. And you do get a lot of dreams, too. It's awesome.
Yeah, I wonder what that does to your REM patterns and all that.
Well, there's, like I said, I did post an article. It was written by a staff writer, but was medically reviewed as well by a doctor. Pediatrician, but still, I mean... Doctors are doctors. Pediatrician just at the end of their schooling, they specialize. That's all that really means.
Yeah.
Of course, a sleep. If it was someone that's that works at a sleep clinic doctor, I would probably value that more. But still, it was at least medically reviewed, and they also fact check constantly, and they do they go through and redo all their articles. It's stuff right at the very top of the article. So yeah.
Well. Maybe. To be honest, I don't know if I would necessarily, listen to what a sleep specialist had to say, but Western medicine and I have kind of a complicated history, and Western physicians, they're kind of again, to use something I said earlier, like a mechanic, they have a list of things, and if they see that, then they go to this, and everything else, unless, it's in their kind of narrow proven view, is useless for some number of reasons until so I would be surprised if there was a ton of actual research on long-term effects of this kind of thing, but it sounds fascinating.
Bo mentioned it to me back in the early 2000s because I moved to San Diego in 2000. We started working together around 2003, 2004. So it's been around for at least 20 years by now. So I'm sure that there's definitely the opportunity to have long-term studies is there because there's a lot of people that have done it so that they could just go and see, hey, how you doing with this?
How was your mental health and your coping skills when you were doing it?
Once I adjusted, same as without the same as regular sleep. Yeah. Actually, I felt a little bit better because I was getting more done in a 24-hour period.
Yeah, I suppose that would help. I suppose there's also something to be said for being able to, reset your brain in 20 minutes. I know there are definitely days where I'm until I get actual sleep, I'm done with whatever this is, or my mood, or whatever. So if you had depressed periods, did that kind of reset you that way.
Yeah, that definitely did. Like by the end of that 3 hour and 40-minute span for me, I started to feel like instantly really exhausted. And then I'd go sleep for that 20 minutes, wake up, and I'd feel like I just had a full night's rest. It was pretty cool. Also, it's like during the daytime, I got a lot of chores done around the house. You know, I got my job done, I got my chores done. And then at night, that was me just gaming and writing music and doing stuff I wanted to do. I was able to create out of thin air extra hours for me.
Yeah, there's, about 100 long-term life goals that I could that I could use some more time with. Speaking of exhaustion, she looks exhausted.
I am. I didn't sleep well at all when we were at Disneyland. And I'm really not looking forward to waking up at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous about coming on today because I only got like an hour or two last night and I don't really do well on not that much sleep, hence the little bottles that are my friend right now.
Yeah, I just downed one thing of my extreme caffeinated cold brew and back to diet soda for right now. The big issue with that the biggest issue with that sleep cycle thing for me was that my wife was on a normal sleep schedule and I was doing that polyphasic sleep schedule. It did not allow for me to be able to sleep next to her very much because I'd climb into bed, it would disturb her. I'd climb out of bed, it would disturb her. So I wound up sleeping on the couch. And that was...
Wow.
The only time I got to sleep in the bed was when she was at work.
Alright, guys, I gotta go now.
Alright, you take care,
Bye,
Steve.
Steve.
Thank you for jumping on.
Night.
It was nice meeting you.
It was nice meeting you too, Sarah. Have a good night, guys.
Yeah, Bo was just saying the same thing. Yes, it was horrible for my marriage.
I'm not sure what my partner would do in that situation. Movement does kind of disturb him, but like, I snore, so he wears earplugs, so at least the noise of me getting in and out wouldn't be a problem.
When I'm asleep, I sleep like the dead. My dad reported one time that there was a lightning strike that struck quite possibly on our property, and I slept through it.
Oh, wow.
And we were on 2 acres.
Allowed?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I lived up in the mountains, and when you live up in the mountains, the clouds to ground distance isn't as great, so it doesn't take as much of a charge. So it's like, when I lived in San Diego, you're at sea level, the clouds are still at 10,000 feet. When those bolts struck, holy shit, they were terrifying. Whereas living at 3,500 feet, it's like, okay, it's only 6,500 feet difference, between the cloud's base and the ground, and yeah, that wasn't as nearly as powerful. I mean, there were some storms that terrified. I'm not scared of storms for the most part. I love thunderstorms. When I was in Nebraska for a week, a severe thunderstorm came through, and I went to the hotel's the bellhop or whoever's at the counter. I was like, "So, is there a tornado siren nearby?" He's like, "Yeah, right across the river." I was in Council Bluffs, Iowa, literally on the Missouri River. Right on the other side was Omaha, Nebraska, and that's where the tornado siren was. I was like, "All right, cool." And what happens if it goes off? He's like, "You'd follow me into the basement of the hotel." I'm like, "Okay." And I start heading out the front door. He's like, "You're insane. You know that, right?"
Yeah, I grew up in Tornado Alley in Kansas City, and that's the same thing. Like right across the river is Kansas City, Kansas. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and that is something I miss so much being out here. Like the thunderstorms, didn't matter how crappy your day was, you feel that like electric shift in the air, and then the rain would start, and if it's like 100 degrees, it just drops 20 degrees instantaneously, and everything, it just, that whole like making everything new. And my family's all scientists, so and scientists aren't particularly smart when they're excited by something, so we were always outside, didn't matter where it was. Like if there was a microburst not far from where we were, and my dad and his wife at the time got into the car kind of driving around trying to see like what it was doing.
That was me. I get my old 57 Ford pickup, and I would drive up the mountain.
Nice.
I would drive up the mountain, and you'd get so close to the base of the clouds, you could actually see them sparkling with electricity. It was amazing. But yeah, and I grew up in an area that would generate thunderstorms daily.
Oh, that would be amazing.
During the summertime. Yeah, oh, fuck yeah. It was amazing.
It's funny how the whole mental acclimation things work, because, you know, some things that would terrify some people for their lives, I find completely soothing. And then, you know, if you're like one of those people, when I was in my mid-20s, actually early in my 30s, I started getting panic attacks, and I'd never had them before. And then it was like just everyday things made me feel like my life was, you know, about to end. So it's funny how that whole acclimation thing works.
And for our people that may not know what a microburst is, I just dropped a link in our episode's general channel from weather.gov.
Yeah, we didn't know what it was until it hit either.
Yeah, microburst, a lot of people, like, if you look at the damage, you'd be like, what, did a tornado come through here? Close.
It's basically an upside-down tornado, so it's wider at the bottom. There's more distributed damage.
Yeah, it's just like, it's like a leaf blower, like, on steroids, blowing right down at the ground.
Yeah.
If you ever, like, there was actually I have this great, oh my lord, this animated GIF they have. It's just this ball of water falling to the ground and then just, yeah, that's a microburst. Yeah. There's also a thing I saw, it was like a little cloud, and it was just pouring rain in one spot, and it's like from an airplane, and it's all, who the hell pissed off this cloud? Yeah, that's a microburst.
Yep. Yeah, the damage is pretty, I mean, it's extensive. It looked like basically a tornado just sucked up this huge, wide area. You know, everything was demolished.
Right, but it's more accurately is like it was the fist of God punching down.
Yes, exactly.
And it does cause vortex circulation. There's a great image of it too. And honestly, microburst, number one cause for plane crashes.
Is that right?
Because if there's a microburst on an air, like say on the runway, as the plane's approaching, it has this strong headwind, so it drops the engines way low in order to try to compensate. And then it goes through the microburst, and now it has this huge tailwind, and they could slam the engines full power, but they can't get enough airspeed up to keep the plane from falling out of the sky.
That is so interesting.
At first, microbursts were theoretical, and planes, like, pilots knew what they were, because they had to deal with it constantly, but, like, no one else was accepting that, yeah, well, that's a thing. Until there was a video that actually captured one. And then they went, okay, well, let's get some Doppler radar at ground level and see what happens. And boom, microburst everywhere.
That's crazy.
The problem was that the Doppler was too high.
Okay, so that is actually a great idea of what I mean about Western science and medicine being dismissive. Because there are experts in their field, these pilots, that are being, everything they say is being completely dismissed because it doesn't happen because we haven't actually seen it. We don't have data on it, so therefore it doesn't exist.
I don't like that. In the 90s, they finally discovered what pilots have been reporting since we started flying above clouds: jets and sprites. If you're not familiar with them, they always happen above thunderstorms, directly above a lightning strike, but not above every lightning strike. They're still trying to figure out exactly what it is. They think it's when it's a positive lightning strike, because like the way that the cloud, wow, we're doing science day today. So the way that the cloud charges,
I can't really. I've been trying to tie things into mental health. I'm not finding anything for this one.
Right. So really fast. Well, I mean, lightning is terrifying. That's something we could talk about with mental health. If you've ever been struck by lightning, we want to talk to you because that's life altering. But the way that happens is that the clouds are charged like a battery. You have hailstones falling with little fine ice crystals rising, stripping electrons. They strip them to where the bottom of the cloud becomes negatively charged and the top of the cloud becomes positively charged because the hailstone is gathering up the charge as it's falling. And you can have a lightning strike come from the top of the cloud to the ground. They're extremely powerful lightning strikes.
and where normally they start at the ground and shoot up.
To an extent. There's this whole thing about step leaders, and I love lightning. I went nuts over lightning. But
I was gonna say
most of the
face just like cranked up to 11 there.
It did. Most lightning comes from the base of the cloud to the ground. The ground gets a positive charge to counter the negative charge of the base of the cloud. Lightning goes and it balances out. The reason that most lightning is cloud to cloud or inner cloud is because that imbalance is inside the cloud and is recorrecting itself. That's why 80% of lightning doesn't hit the ground. But every once in a while you get that massive bolt that comes from the top of the cloud and hits the ground, where it's like the ground is negatively charged and the top of the cloud responds, and they suspect that's when the jets and sprites happen, and they are massive. They're absolutely massive, and they're beautiful.
So what is a jet? What are jets and sprites?
I am pulling up images now. Oh yeah, here we go. I got some good images. I'm dropping it into the.
Okay.
All right, so the first one I'm dropping in right is a jet into the chat. And that's an actual photo of a jet if you look at it. Followed by a sprite. These are not graphics, these are actual images. Absolutely gorgeous. However, I will say, hey, Bo, if you want to go back to the polyphasic sleep schedule and talk about how it affected your mental health, we have two people here. We could talk about it. Because, I mean, definitely that polyphasic sleep schedule, it has its benefits and it does have its drawbacks. Especially interpersonally, it has some serious drawbacks.
Yeah, I bet it would. Even just like alternating work schedules. Austin and I, we both work from home, at least for the time being, but I'm days, he swings. And so that just makes it difficult to get that connecting time when I'm falling asleep, right as he's getting off work.
Right. And like for me with that sleep schedule, like my parents would come to visit. Well, you better start the visit at the beginning of that 3 hour and 40-minute window, because if you come in near the end, I'm going to disappear for 20 minutes. I could try pushing through it, but that's a very miserable me for the entire visit.
Well, but also if you only need like 30 minutes to recharge, then... But what about so you've got all this extra time, all this extra you time at night. Did you find that made you grow sort of apart from your partner at all?
So, my marriage is unusual. I'm just going to say that now. We've been married now since 2010, and only really now are we starting to feel close. So, I don't think it caused us to draw apart so much as it kept us apart. Could you
see that being a thing based on your experience there?
Yeah, I could.
Or Bo, how was it horrible for your marriage? He said it was horrible for his.
Let's see if he's still listening.
Yeah, I sort of wonder about that. That to me is like one of the most terrifying things in a relationship, is growing apart and not being able to find your way back, Because it's like once you hit that point of no return, it's like each other too well to be able to start over, but you're too different to be able to sort of get back what you had. It's a very scary place to be in a relationship.
I would have to agree. And I just sent a link to Bo. He wants to jump on so we could talk about this. This is actually a good subject.
Nice.
It's funny because like when Bo mentioned
It
it.
took us a while to find it, but I'm fascinated.
Yeah, the polyphasic sleep schedule. He did it for a lot longer than I did.
How long did you do it for?
I did it for about a year and a half. I will say that if I wind up single again, I will go back to it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Gotcha.
I like that extra time. And if I'm living alone, duh.
Well, it's kind of like getting extra years with that much extra sleep, you know?
Yeah.
It's like a very abbreviated form of immortality.
And Bo's here.
So, can you hear me?
Oh, you're loud and clear.
All right.
Hi, Bo.
And I can hear my own voice coming through your microphone.
It's crazy how much time you have. So, let me put it into perspective. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
Sweet. So, let me turn stuff down a little bit.
Yeah, turn down the episode because there's that delay. It's going to really screw with you.
Oh, I see what's going on. Hang on.
You still have the podcast running, so you hear this in double now.
Yeah, that was really disorienting. Okay, cool. So it's insane the amount of time that you get when you're doing polyphasic. And there's the thing also to know is there's different levels of polyphasic, right? What we were talking about with taking 20-minute naps every 4 hours, that's what's called Uberman. And that is the most extreme way to do it. And of course, it's the only way I entertain doing it because that's who I am.
Yeah, no shit. You
Yeah,
don't look like an extremist in that regard, but you take everything to the 11.
So, let me tell you, based on what you know about me now, can you see how this just like fueled the bipolar diagnosis that I didn't know about then?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because it basically let me take all the rules out of my life, other than the fact that I took a 20-minute nap every 4 hours on the nose. Because if I missed it, like, it's very easy, like, oh, I got a conference call. And I was working at the time, I was able to manage my schedule, but I also was kind of at the mercy of clients that I had international at the time. I had clients in like Germany and whatnot.
Where that's actually where the sleep cycle can also, at the same time, be beneficial because you're awake and alert during their daytime.
So
And you can have a life outside of that.
And we just touched on the way that I was able to justify this to myself, right? Like, oh, well, this helps me do my job better. I can support my clients better. It's cool. I can get on a 3 a.m. conference call, not a 3:15 one. I got to be off at 3:15. You know, like, it really did.
How? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, it created a lot of, while it gave you a lot of freedom and a lot of ability to do more, it also put very strict guardrails to where I couldn't go out and do stuff with my family because I'm like, yeah, cool. Around 3 o'clock, all right, we're going to find somewhere where I can take a nap. And my wife hated that.
Yep.
It's funny how you brought up it enabling your extremes because I was talking before that episode about my mother being bipolar, and I very much, I think I have more of the depressive side from my dad, but that I definitely, at least behaviorally, inherited that whole all or nothing thing from her, and so I see that as soon as you were talking about being an all or nothing kind of person before you said your diagnosis, I was thinking about that aspect of it.
Yeah, I have a very addictive personality, and the weird thing is I can be addicted to pretty much anything at all.
Anything, yeah.
Yeah, his superpower is not a very superpower.
Oh, I can quit anything on the fly when I want to. The problem is I'm able to deceive myself about whether I really want to. When it takes something for me to really decide, and then I've quit just about everything cold turkey multiple times.
And
but listen
right
listen to what I just said multiple times. I keep
Yeah.
going back.
Yeah.
Yep.
But if you're going to have a superpower, at least you can direct it well. Like, I suppose.
But that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
But the awareness helps, though. I've only really become aware of it in the last probably year and a half, and so being aware sucks, but it does help.
Does it?
They say ignorance is bliss.
Yes.
It can be. It can also cause more damage, I would think.
Oh!
Has it, how hard do you find it to then switch trajectory once you realize that's happening?
Let me get back to you on that.
Fair.
No, I read a book recently that kind of checked a lot of boxes for me and has made me aware of a lot of shit that I have been doing for my entire life.
And I broke into the book a little bit, and it's starting to check some boxes on me, and it's kind of scary.
Diagnosis has a way of doing that. It's like your whole life suddenly makes sense in a sometimes not great way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you were asking about the polyphasic, because we're kind of actually looping back. I was going to loop back to my wife. The polyphasic stuff, aside from not being available for whatever they needed to do during the day, or wanted to do during the day, it was also okay. When I was like, when are you going to bed? Because I wanted to plan when we could go to bed together. Because my idea was, well, if I lay there long enough for her to go to sleep, then
that counts.
That counts. Like I put her to sleep, and now I can get up and do all the crazy shit I want to do at 2 a.m. in the with my time. And the reality is, she has always woke up all night. Like, she wakes up like every hour or two, and so she's waking up. I'm not there, and it was affecting her. And it took.
Did you find that you using that as sort of a convenience to find ways to direct your life in that way?
I did, and I also found what it really ultimately did was it took a kind of a fracture that we had in our relationship, and then it was something that I was able to use to just avoid whenever I needed to, because I'm on a different I'm on a different cycle than everybody else. I can kind of duck out whenever I want to, and it allowed us to drift apart pretty bad.
So what started out as like a crack in the sidewalk started turning into a canyon.
Yeah.
So do you think, going back to my question for E then, which he wasn't certain about, do you think that all that extra time that you were spending alone doing your own things, do you think that made you further grow apart as a person also, or was it just a widening of this crack?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
because you essentially had this other life, right, separate from you and your family and the work time that most people have. You had these, like, all these extra hours that you're spending essentially as a single person, sort of
kind of
accruing experiences. Well, but
Wow.
I mean, accruing that sort of that, like, extra hours during the day.
I gamed,
you're spending,
so
like, a single person. You're you know what I mean? Like, you're getting the same sort of alone experience that a single person would have. So your life is not growing together necessarily during that time. Does that make sense?
More than you can imagine.
I was just gonna say the flip side of that too is that your together time is not even like as high quality, and it helps to further the divide. And I think that when my wife was awake, it hurt more than when she was asleep. Because, like, hey, let's go to a theme park. Okay, but I need a place to crash.
Yeah.
And, that doesn't fly well, especially, fortunately, I didn't do it when we had kids. Well, okay, I had my older kids. They were teenagers at the time when I was doing this. Not the same as now I have, the 4-year-old and 7-year-old.
Did your partners ever consider doing it with you?
No.
Okay.
I think this is one of those things that if you do this and you're married, you should do it both of you should do it.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's a great thing for someone that does not have other commitments and can structure their life around it. But for someone that, let's just say, other people depend on, it definitely reduces your availability to them.
Yeah, like if you have to move, I mean, moving is an all-day thing. Moving on the sleep schedule is nearly impossible. Because it's basically start loading the truck, go take a nap. Wake up, finish loading the truck, take a nap. Wake up, go to the location, start unpacking, take a nap. Wake up, finish unpacking, unload the truck, take a nap. And a lot of people can't handle that.
It sounds like, though, you would have, like, if that essentially resets your day and you're more productive during that second half than, of that second 4 hours or that 8 hours or last 4 hours of that 12 hours, sounds like that could definitely be beneficial for, joint effort, even if you're gone for 30 minutes.
It is, but the reality is, and you tell me if this was your experience, it's very surreal, and you start to kind of lose your grip on reality. If I'm being completely honest, because once you're in this for say 2 or 3 months, it probably doesn't even take that long, to be honest, but each 4 hour cycle starts to feel like a full day. Like your brain starts to remap itself. And if you think about it, there's like 6 cycles in a day that we look at with this. Each day starts to feel like a week.
Yeah.
And so and then your weeks start to feel like months. So you're going. It's a very distorted kind of existence, because you're going through time at a different pace than everybody else from a perception standpoint. And it really
partially from a reality standpoint, because
I
said, with those extra hours, you've got sort of more days.
Yeah, and also
cumulatively than everyone else.
So one thing I can say is because of the upcoming episode about disassociation, I've been doing a lot of extra just digging in and learning more about different types of disassociation. What Bo is describing is really very similar to depersonalization, derealization disorder, where you start to feel that you're an outside observer of your own life. That's kind of how I started to feel. Like, almost like you're playing a third-person video game, and you're controlling what you do, but it's less involved. That's how I felt. You become
emotionally detached then?
To an extent. It's kind of weird. Like, in some cases, I would be hypersensitive and hyper-emotional. In other cases, I'd be numb. It'd be like it's happening to somebody else.
And I feel like, looking back on it, that was because we definitely were dealing with deficits in some ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like, chronic, I can't think of the word when you don't get enough sleep. Because your decision-making ability changes because
sleep deprivation.
The priorities, yeah, exactly. Because the priorities in your mind have shifted, and your decision-making changes. And
for me,
go ahead.
I was going to say
where you're going.
Maybe for me, it was like a lot of it. The reason that I started getting that kind of that derealization, depersonalization, it was kind of a defense mechanism because of the fact that nobody else was with me and could relate to what I was doing. And that's kind of like, it was like I said, to protect myself to a degree, because people were always curious about it.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely a conversation piece.
Oh, yeah. Now, if Bo and I were in constant contact during that time frame, probably would have helped us, but wouldn't have helped us with our relationships with others.
No, because
odds are we would have fed into each other and made it worse.
Did you know anybody that was doing it while you were doing it?
Just you.
When I wasn't doing it when you were. I had done it before, right?
Well, I started doing it in 2007, 2008, around there.
Okay. Well, but that
was the tail end of when you did it, but we weren't really talking.
Right, I was up here. I had moved to Idaho by that point. So.
Yeah.
How are your core memories during that period? Like, does it affect anything in that?
Oh, I remember a lot of the stuff pretty well. I don't see any difference myself. Bo?
I don't. What I was going to ask you, and where I thought you were going earlier, I mean, your creativity and your your productivity was like through the roof, though, right?
Oh yeah, some of the best music I ever wrote.
Yeah, and that for me, being bipolar, I love to be manic, and basically, I felt like I was manic almost that full 3 years. Looking back, like I didn't even know what that was then, right? But looking back, it was like I was on a manic high for 3 years straight.
I was just gonna say, that whole thing sounds like the logic that you hear bipolar people rationalizing going off their meds. Like, I'm so much more creative. Like, I have all of this potential that's being untapped because such and such.
Yeah, but there's the downside, the depressive side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
just saying that's a benefit that you hear a lot in mental health disorders, that medication mutes it, and for this, your sleep cycle is muting that potential somewhat.
So I am compensated and measured based on productivity for what I do. It's tech work, but it's billable hours.
Okay.
My numbers double on months,
and not because you were working more hours, or
yes, he was.
Okay, so last month was my kind of falling down, but what was it? September, there was a 48-hour period that I billed 38 hours in.
Wow.
And that was because, and there were legitimate reasons to work more than I normally do, but no reason to literally sit at my desk for over 24 hours and barely get up.
Yeah, I mean, if
you
did
that sleep schedule, you wouldn't have the performance deficits that most people would, working 38 or 48 hours, or essentially 10 of those are useless.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, so, it's like
are you still doing it? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go for
polyphasic?
Yeah.
No, and I wouldn't go back. Like, I wouldn't do that to my wife. We've had some really good conversations about what it did to her emotionally in a lot of ways, and like I said, unless he said it best, if you're going to do it and you're in a relationship, I think you both need to. Yeah. Otherwise, it's kind of disrespectful.
Because, like Bo was saying, his wife would wake up, Bo's not there.
Yeah.
You feel abandoned.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when I wake up and my wife's already at work and she didn't say goodbye. It's just, it hurts a little bit. It shouldn't. It's irrational to an extent because, I mean, she's being respectful by, hey, he's asleep, he has to get up an hour after I leave for work. I'm not going to bother him. I wouldn't mind.
Yeah. Well, and you would almost have to at least subconsciously feel like those subtle drifts or personality changes that people have when they spend a lot of time away from you, and then you come back and sort of do I did this while you were away and this and whatever, even if you don't necessarily discuss it, that growth is away from their context.
Yeah, also there's definitely, and I think this is just human nature in general, if one person is accomplishing a mountain worth of stuff and the other they're accomplishing double the mountain worth of stuff, you kind of feel less than.
Oh yeah.
And it's not, it's like, okay, I'm not getting any more done per hour than you. It's just I have more hours. That's all. Yeah. And ultimately, it's like what I was doing had less value than what my wife was doing. My wife, at the time, she was a surge tech. She was making considerably more than me. Now she's a nurse. She makes way more than me, and for far less hours. But, yeah, and she kind of felt devalued in that I was getting all the house chores done. I was finding time to play. I was getting homework done with the kids. I was getting everything. I was like super dad.
Yeah.
But I was also inattentive husband because I was asleep all the time.
Yeah, that was that's kind of a, when you're a stay-at-home mom.
Good night, Brandy.
Bye, Brandy.
Night, Brandy.
When you're a stay-at-home mom, you have that sort of thing with everyone where you feel like I essentially was in this, like, kind of professional and social black hole where I grew leaps and bounds in my personal development as a parent, but everybody else is passing me by in, professional whatever. Like when I came back into tech, I was 10 years behind everyone else. I imagine that's kind of probably how it felt to your partners, where like you look around and your partner's doing so much more than you possibly could at that moment.
Yeah, and well, I think that's just kind of a side note when it comes to tech. Being 10 years behind is not the end of the world. Tech changes so fast that you can just jump in at any point, as long as you can grasp it and roll with it. It's kind of like grabbing the horns of a bull.
Yeah, the problem is getting people...
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the problem is getting people to believe that you can jump back in after 10 years.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. I was going to say, or you can just specialize in all those clients that refuse to upgrade, and
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like those ones that still use that putrid pink device? For a company that doesn't exist anymore, technically speaking? What version are you running? 4.0. What? That was like 2006, man! What are you doing?
Unless your tech company is Garmin, although they don't do that anymore either. When I worked there for like the 5 years I worked there, they supported every device that they had ever made fully.
Yeah,
so
that was where we used to work. There were systems that ran on a proprietary operating system that was a very horrendous clone of DOS.
Mm-hmm.
How about that stack? Do you remember troubleshooting the stack? The 6 computers? Whoo. 6 computers that had to communicate internally with each other in order to do their job. And it was all proprietary operating system, hardware, software, everything. Real pain in the ass to troubleshoot that thing. Man, yeah. That company was fun though. Learned a lot. Made really good friends.
For sure. I'm kind of spinning on something right now, and
You tell.
so we're talking about polyphasic sleep and kind of how that tied in to my cycles that I wasn't aware of at the time, and I went off of that polyphasic sleep, and the next thing that I did with my life is I went into traveling like 80% of the time. And I've told you kind of what I kind of manufactured. I manufactured this life that allowed me to rapid cycle.
With the bipolar.
Yeah, I was basically on highs when I was on the road, and I'd come home and I would crash. And
Were you rapid cycle initially, or did you just engineer your mood shifts that way?
I would say, knowing Bo, it wasn't deliberate, but it happened that way.
Yeah, when I look back, and I'm kind of in the middle of kind of looking back on how did I get where I am now, right? It's like, and I'm just starting to kind of piece a lot of things together, but I'm realizing I jumped right from that 3 years of polyphasic sleep where I was super disconnected. You were talking about how you kind of have this separate life, right, where you're almost single while everybody else is in their sleep modes. I jumped into traveling, and in a lot of ways kind of continued that whole mentality when I was traveling. I was having to lose everybody,
right?
And it was really kind of interesting because on the road I was very much an alcoholic. There's no doubt about it. When I came home, and there were times where I'd go 4 or 5 months without traveling because things would happen, I wouldn't have a drink that 4 or 5 months, no problem. As soon as I would go on the road again, it's like boom. And when I say, for me, it wasn't, I'm drinking 4 or 5 drinks. It was usually 15 to 25 drinks a night.
Yeah, we're talking absolute shit-faced.
You've seen, I think you've seen that once, E. Maybe.
Does that roll into your
I've
work
never
hours,
seen.
or-
I've never seen you shit-faced.
Did it roll into my work hours? Absolutely, in such odd ways, because
Wooing
I was-
clients.
no. It
Ah.
did not. It has never. Well, once has it impacted me professionally. No, I'm the guy that will be out, and we're out at the bar at 1 a.m, and I go, "Oh shit, we're doing that webinar tomorrow, that live webinar," and I pull my laptop out at 2 a.m. at the bar, and I'm working on my PowerPoint presentation. I'm still drinking. I'm pounding drinks, and I'm working on it. And in that 9 a.m., I'm doing presentations all day for like 6 hours.
And probably still
How did
drunk
that
from the drinks from the night before.
presentation-
What's that?
I was saying probably still drunk from the drinks from the night before.
No. I
Damn!
I don't get hangovers. It's weird.
Oh no, I've had where I woke up the next morning and I'm still drunk. Not even hungover.
Oh.
I'm drunk.
I would be functional by 9. By 9 a.m., I would be completely functional. And
How did
I
that
took-
presentation look to you after looking at what you wrote while you were drunk?
So looking at it objectively, I could actually go out on YouTube and watch them. They're still out there. But the thing is, what really woke me up to this is when a coworker looked at me and she goes, the last time this happened was actually in 2019. And I kind of stopped traveling after that, and then COVID hit, of course, and I've just kind of restructured my life a little bit. But I was on this trip I was there for 5 days, and I think it was about 6 hours sleep the entire week.
Wow.
And all week was presenting live presentations, this kind of stuff, and I was nailing it. Everyone around me was telling me, and they're going, "How are you out closing the bars down, and you're the first one in the office, and you're like," someone goes, "What is this cocaine? Like what's going on?"
Yeah, it's
I'm
called
like,
manic.
Yeah, and at the time, this was my wake up call. Was this trip? It was a mess. I lost my wallet while I was there. I had to try to get home and fly home without any identification. And that was the trip where actually I came home and I was like, "Hey, maybe I should try this thing called therapy that people have been telling me about." And yeah, it's been 3 years of interesting times since then.
Yeah, if you don't hate your therapist initially, you don't have a good therapist. Your therapist should be able to help you to realize where you're fucking up, and you're going to blame them. At least that's my experience. Now, one thing I was going to say about knowing Bo is that he deliberately built his life to rapid cycle, but he didn't do it with the intent of, I'm going to take advantage of this rapid cycle. It was, this is convenient, I'm going to do this. This is convenient, I'm going to do this. Knowing Bo, that's how it was. Because Bo, he's a nice guy. And I know he hates hearing that now. But it's true. There's the middle finger!
Right?
But that's the thing. That's what a nice guy does.
Well, and it was the gains. My personal fulfillment in life is success, right?
Well, and for somebody who is bipolar and also a control addict, being able to control one's bipolar is like a double ding.
Oh, I'm all powerful, or so I think. Yeah.
It's
Anyway,
been absolutely great having you back in my life too, Bo. Seriously.
I mean, what's it been, like 3 weeks, dude? It's crazy.
It doesn't. It feels like you and Dave have been back in my life for a year now. Is what it feels like.
Yeah, I agree.
It's nice. It's really nice.
My apologies, Bo. I think my superpower is being overly honest. Sorry if that came off as
No, not at all.
whatever. I didn't mean it to be.
No.
So I have come in my life to appreciate people that tell it as they see it without sugarcoating at all. I appreciate it. Even if I disagree, and even if I hate what I hear, I appreciate it.
I used to work for a Fed organization, and there was a guy there who didn't really like me when we worked there, but he called me, never even had my phone number, don't know how he got it, that he called me out of the blue about 3 years later after we stopped working together because he was having a personal crisis. And he said, "You're the only person I know that won't bullshit me." And I was like, okay, how did you get my number? And thanks, I guess.
But I mean, right there, a lot of people can't handle that.
Right.
We've all been trained since day one, be nice. And sometimes being nice is not being nice. Sometimes being brutally honest is being nice.
Sometimes what people need is honesty.
That swift kick in the ass.
Most of the time, that's what people need, really.
Yeah.
They don't think they need it, but that's really what people really need.
And maybe I have a little bit more ability to do that sort of to or with people. My mother had like multiple suicide attempts when I was growing up. So I had this thing where like I felt like if I upset my mother, I could send her into a suicidal spiral. So I was constantly microcosmically aware of what she could handle and what I said did to people's moods.
That's not fair.
So
I'm sorry, it's not fair.
Well, and she didn't mean to do that.
No.
Either, and it's not something that any amount of therapy can take out of me.
Oh, I'm not blaming her. I'm just saying it's not fair.
Yeah, no. But at the same time, it gave me like a really keen ability, I think, to know how to say things to people without, affecting them too badly. Maybe, I don't know.
I've gotten pretty good at being able to deliver the truth in a way that people can digest it.
Yeah.
Because I have some friends out there that they have no tact. They're just going to say it as they see it, and to hell with your feelings. Where at least I could go, you know what? Before I get started, just let me say this. Now that this is said, here's what I need to say.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is a gift, it's a talent. Because I'm not sure that everybody has the ability to say what they need to say and still keep friends. So, that's something.
Yeah. At the same time, though, if me being honest is a problem, I don't think I want to be your friend anymore.
And you also become everyone's counselor. That was my, that's always my thing. Counselor and mediator to all.
I tried so hard to be the mediator between friends, and it never ends well, and I get hurt in the process.
It doesn't.
Sometimes
especially
it just
not for the mediator.
No, the mediator gets hit on both sides, and a lot of times just even getting involved hurts more than it helps, I've noticed. So I still have that urge. I see people get like this, like not getting along. I'm like, God, I want to help.
Yeah.
No.
You are a helper, Eve, hence the podcast.
Yeah, this is a good way for me to be able to help. Let you find your own value in this podcast. If you find an episode that helps you, fantastic. I'm not trying to make it help you. We're just putting it out there. So,
we didn't know we were going to talk about the stuff we were talking about tonight, right?
No. So, do you have anything that you wanted to add about the polyphasic sleep that we may not have covered? You haven't gone through it a lot longer than me. You probably saw some things.
Yeah, I would definitely say anybody that tries it, really be honest with yourself about your state of being, because I was young when I did it, right? Like I was also very emotionally naive. I was not in touch with myself at all, and I think had I been going through some of the things that I was experiencing then, knowing what I know now, I would have probably put the brakes on a few times, because I'm like, this is going to have some detrimental effects. I think it's really cool. I think doing it for 3 years like I did it was a horrible idea. I think that for someone that has the lifestyle that can support it and maybe wants to do it for a brief period of time, like maybe a month or two, I think that it could really give you a boost. But long term, I almost did it long. I did as long as I did to almost prove a point, because to all the naysayers. But it was at my own detriment. So what's the point of that, right?
Right.
Did you notice anything lasting after that period that you feel like is a problem for you now because you did it for so long, or at all?
No, I think it took me a good couple months to be able to actually sleep all the way through the night again. Like it took a while to break out of that cycle and reprogram my brain.
Yeah,
So there was,
even for me, having done it for half the length of time, it still took me a long ass time to get back into the regular sleep cycle.
right.
Do you yourself have that feeling of inadequacy once you stop? Like you're not doing nearly as much as you should be anymore.
So
That wasn't
that's
an
a-
issue for me.
That's a rough question for me because basically anytime I'm not on manic high, I feel like I'm not performing
I
at the
can see
level
that.
I was. So, or at the level that I should be, right? It's like I've at some point in my life set the benchmark there, and anything less is failing, which is
Well, you
kind
have
of dangerous.
That's really not
the
fair to
control.
yourself.
Well, but he has a control thing, right? And so part of his control thing is being at his peak capacity. And for him, judging by benchmarks, that is his peak capacity.
Where the actual where I say this all the love in the world, dude. Your actual level is the average between your highs and your lows. That's where you
That would
should
probably
be.
be the healthiest level for
Yeah.
sure.
That
Or-
way,
or-
that
or
way, when
just
you
being
over
there
like when,
without the ups and downs, just being steady would be much healthier. Absolutely.
oh, absolutely. Now, at the same time, let's face it, bipolar, you will never have that level for an extended period of time. You may attain it for a while, but you will have peaks, you will have troughs, and you just have to look at it realistically. On your peaks, you're going to overperform. That counters the troughs where you're going to underperform as long as you're still hitting your average.
Well, I've got a boss right now that told me he was it was kind of funny. He was, why are you killing yourself over like something that happened on one day or with another? I look at numbers on a month basis. So if your numbers for the month are good, I don't give a shit. I was like, that works really well for me.
Kind of
Well,
like
I
that.
was
Actually,
kind of-
It lets those
I was gonna-
peaks and valleys kind of level out.
I was going to say that ties
I was
into
kind of-
something what my dad taught me when my mom had her traumatic brain injury, which is he was so hyper focused on the day to day. And with a traumatic brain injury, some days are better than others. Like the good days could be really good, the bad days could be really bad. And it was an emotional roller coaster that was destroying him. And it was someone he knew that said, stop paying attention to the waves and pay attention to the tide.
That to me is really hard, especially because with the TBI, a lot of times your great days are nowhere near where your bad used to be's were.
Oh, for sure. Having experienced it firsthand with my mother, yeah, for sure.
But I was wondering with Bo, with the traveling and your bipolar, but even more if you have to do like presentations, how do your depressive episodes affect that? How do you do with the traveling and having to essentially perform when you're going through a dip?
It's really weird. Like, so I was not aware. My diagnosis came essentially after I stopped traveling. So everything is kind
Okay.
of looking back. So it's tough, but I don't really recall ever being on a low on the road.
You really did engineer your mood swings. That's kind of amazing.
Well, it's amazing, and then when you think about the opposite side of it, it's horrifying because my wife and my kids got
Got the lows.
the absolute worst of me constantly.
Well, and also, you were self-medicating with alcohol. I'm assuming that helped you keep some of your demons almost at bay, which is odd to say that about alcohol during those longer periods, but that can't have been great for any part of you.
So I think the alcohol initially started for me because I had social anxiety. Like I was very sheltered growing up as a kid. I was not able to interact with a lot of people. And so I got thrown in pretty much right after E and I worked together. Actually at the same company as when I went out into the field and started working in the field and schmoozing sales reps and all that shit. So E knows me right before this phase really took off, which was
Right.
if I'm being honest, wow, that was 15 years ago.
Yeah, about it's like I I left San Diego and started working remotely, where I'm at now, about the same time.
Remotely working or working remotely?
How about both?
Anyway, sorry. But
I was gonna say, in hindsight,
oh, sorry.
I'll go for it.
Oh no, we had kind of gotten off on a little bit of a sidebar with the alcohol helping your
it was
mood
the
stabilization
social anxiety.
during your.
Right, I was talking about kind of that's what it started with, the social anxiety, but I think I used alcohol almost like to push me into these highs. I'm still trying to figure it out, really.
Well, I mean, basically, you had your little mini lows every night when you were shit-faced, right? Like, you could sort of let go of whatever your emotional baggage is that you would normally wallow in during your depressive periods.
And never thought about it that way. Yeah.
yeah, that's one of those things. I can see it right as you were saying that. I was watching Bo's face, and it's like, oh shit, that actually kind of makes sense. Oh god, so I need to look at this further.
What insurance do you take, Jack?
Right.
Whatever insurance PayPal covers.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
But no, that was actually, yeah, I could. Damn.
It was like a release, right? A release for the lows that was kind of engineered, like you said.
It kind of let you kick the can down the road.
And the fact that you managed to do all that without realizing it is, a testament to your kind of need for control. I think that's crazy. You're even doing it when you're not thinking about it.
I was doing it in my sleep, I'll tell you, and that started from a kid. I had a lot of things that didn't make sense. There were so many arbitrary rules that I just...
Is that what drives your control, you think?
I think so. It's because I had no control as a kid. Like, I never knew what to expect. So
we've talked at great length about your childhood. Your childhood was atypical is a good way to put it.
Yeah, and so when you say your childhood, you think, oh, abusive.
No.
Not at all. But just, yeah.
Where did the arbitrariness come from? Was it religion or just overprotectiveness or?
Religion was a large aspect. I also had a sibling that was severely disabled.
So that pushed you into the everything else category. Your sibling had needs and you got whatever time or effort was left after that.
So what I've realized recently, and actually it's because of the book I was reading, and we should just call it out, right? E?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so the book that I read that I put off reading for like 3 or 4 years,
just because of the title.
Because of the title pissed me off. The title of the book is No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it's kind of funny because the title turned me off because I'm like, what? I'm supposed to not be a nice guy? Why are people telling me I need to read this book? They want me to be an asshole? And so I wouldn't even read it. And so then I read the back cover and it pissed me off even more because it says, the thing about nice guys, they'll do anything for anyone. They do things for their church group. They do things for their wife. They do this and that. And everybody says they're nice. The thing about nice guys, their dirty little secret is they're not nice at all. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of what the back of it is. And what it comes down to is nice guys do everything for everybody because they've created this false mantra in their head that if you do good things, your life will be good. Things will be good. So
heavens reward cognitive dissonance or cognitive distortion.
There's another level to that got basically rocket loaded into my head. I can't even remember the lady's name, but it's this woman who, basically she had all the money and all the things, and then she kind of got rid of it all because she realized she hated her life. And she says that that need to do things for everybody else, to put everyone else first, to be nice is a form of self-hatred. And that just hit me so freaking hard, part of my almost French. Like it like threw my hair back because I identify with that so much.
And I was going to say, from an outside observer of Bo's life, I didn't know him as a kid, but I heard enough of the stories. The way that his life was structured for him, because let's face it, that's what it was, he was basically taught that his only value is that what he brings to his sister more than anything. Am I missing my mark?
Slightly. So I do want to correct you, because I actually just about a week and a half ago went and sat down and talked to my parents about this.
Okay.
And my dad was like waiting for me to be like, everything's your fault. I hate you and this. And it wasn't that at all. It was, what I realized, my parents never put any of what I did on me. It was, my sister was 2 years younger than me. And her disability came on very fast at about the 18-month mark for her. So I'm about 4 or 5, and my sister, who is starting to develop like a normal child, then starts to revert. And I can't wrap my head around it. I don't know how to help her. My parents are young. They were very young parents. They don't know what to do. I'm sure, it was, everyone was under stress, and I started doing crazy things that basically created a self mantra that my needs were less than pretty much anybody else's.
Well, at that age, developmentally, you're essentially a bleeding heart, and that's where you start to really form your idea of self. So my son, he had his first kindergarten choir performance, and this little girl had missed too many rehearsals for whatever reason, and they told her the night of that she couldn't do the solo, and so she's standing behind him just in tears through the whole thing. And so my son spends the whole thing turned around, patting her hand, telling her it'll be okay. And that just, and that's just how he is. Mm-hmm. And that's how I was, because my mother was so damaged. That's who I became. My life self-worth was based on, Austin and I talk about this all the time, during those up till 5 a.m, talking drunk, let's be honest, kind of nights.
I miss those, to be honest.
So, but for years and years and years, because of my mother, combined with, I was a fat kid in a very rich bedroom community where your appearance was all you were. So my self-worth was really skewed. I was fat, so therefore I shouldn't be allowed to breathe around normal, beautiful people or whatever. But so because of that, all my single, all my adult, all my young life, I felt like my purpose was to be other people's dumping ground. I would take on whatever they couldn't for themselves, not help them figure it out, not even necessarily be their sounding board, but I would take on all the shit that they couldn't handle and do it for them, because I felt like that was my purpose.
What kind of adult friendships have you had, Sarah?
That's a complicated question. I didn't even go on my first date until I was 25, because of that whole, I didn't get out of that environment until, I was in my early 20s. So really, I have 1 or 2 friends that I've had since I was young, but they were the only 2 friends I ever had, kind of thing. And past that, yeah, I was everybody's therapist and whatever. I'm a chameleon, so I never had a group of friends of my own. I had 8 friends in people's groups, but I don't fit in anywhere. I fit in a little bit everywhere, kind of thing, I guess. And then I had a kid and I dropped out of society for 10 years.
So it's interesting because this whole, what we've been discussing with kind of self needs, and everybody else's needs are more important than yours. So, E, tell me where you see yourself in this description of my friendships.
This should be
I,
interesting.
I would say,
can I hang on?
okay.
So, I have two types of friends. I have people that I'm very good friends with, and I abandon them because I don't get what I need out of that relationship because they don't need anything from me. It's just friendship. And then I have the other people that I devote tons of energy to that get all of my time. And they're the ones that really, it's a one-way thing where I'm just helping them constantly. But I feel good about it. So, where should I be putting my friendship energy?
I know where you should be putting your friendship energy.
But
I will say that
where have I been lately?
you have been in a very healthy place lately. I'll say that. Much healthier than you have been. Because now you are also able to accept when people are trying to help you. It's not all about you helping them. It's a two-way street. Is that the best thing? I don't know. That's kind of a codependent thing. But it is better than where it was you were always there for them, but don't you dare fucking talk about my life. That was kind of where we were back when I lived in San Diego. When I was at my lowest,
so much
you
easier.
were the most present.
That's interesting.
Never looked at it that
sounds to
way?
me like, how many friends do you have like E that have been both present for long periods of time and you would feel comfortable asking that question to because you feel like you get a viable answer? Because for me, like those one or two friends that I still have from when I was young, those are really the only ones that I feel see me and that sort of trust themselves into my life even when I would try to shove them out because I don't let people see me really either. It's all about them all the time.
From my childhood, I still have a few friends that I could say that I have an amazing friendship with.
What about you, Bo?
But I was going to say, for my adult life, I don't want a friendship that I can't... basically, if I can't just sit in a room with you and we can just sit and like watch a show, be on our phones, and we're totally comfortable, I can't be friends with you. I have to be able to have that. There's no requirement. Friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So can you say the question again, Sarah?
I was just gonna say with the dynamic that it seems like we have like the people that are really my friends, the only people who've been in my life for a significant number of years, like they're the ones that push themselves sort of at me or that happen to be able to be there for me when I absolutely had to have someone because I was like you, I don't let people see me. I don't talk about myself. It's all about you and what you need. And because I also am selfish helping other people because it keeps me from having to focus on my own shit. Mm-hmm. And so like with E, you ask him that question, but I don't get the sense that there's many other people in your life who've been around long enough to ask that question to and who would give you a viable answer because he knows you and has helped you enough for that to be a two-way street friendship.
I'm going to throw something out there that Bo said when we first reconnected just a couple weeks ago, which was that he finished the book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, and he discovered that he doesn't maintain friendships. He pushes people away. And he thought that he had done the same to Dave and me. And Dave and I both were like, bullshit. It's never been that way with us. Were some dynamics at play that kind of fed into it at times. But we've all had each other's back.
Are you guys the kind you could disappear out of each other's lives for 5 years and then as soon as you come back, it's like no time?
That's literally what happened. Literally what happened.
Yeah, same.
And it's happened a few times. Like what?
Yeah.
I've come to see you, just out of the blue. Like, hey, I'm on a work trip. I'm in the area.
And it's like we didn't miss a beat.
Yep. And same thing with Dave. I've done it down a couple times in San Diego, and it's like, if I'm being completely honest, the two of you are the only ones I have that are like that. Because right after you left, right, I left San Diego as well. I went to Idaho.
And you were San Diego for life. You were a lifer. I was a transplant. You were a lifer.
No, I was born and raised there. I have work friends, but we talked about earlier that that's a different person when I'm on work trips.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for me to connect with work friends because I'm not always that Bo. So
you're a chameleon like me.
I used to be a chameleon, and I stopped doing that at about the time I moved to San Diego. I realized how unhealthy it was when I couldn't have two groups of friends meet. When I had to deliberately try to keep them separated because I was different people.
So
yeah, that was me having a realization going, that's not healthy. I should not be different people to different people. I should be me. Who am I? I was very fortunate to have that self-awareness.
So boiling that question down then, Bo had you and Dave, and you obviously have Bo and maybe, I'm guessing, one or two other people, but I think the
Dave
common
for sure.
thread is there. Those are probably the only people who know you well enough that you let in.
I'm going to drop names because I know they're listening, or they do listen at times. Philippe and Eric. We've been best friends. We were like best friends since 4th grade. Those are two that really, really close. And I'm reconnecting with some of my friends from... Okay, so grew up in a very small town, 3,500 people. One elementary school, one middle school, one high school. There was no transferring around between different schools. You follow the chain. Your friends that you made in kindergarten, you became friends with the whole time through, or in the sandbox at preschool. I'm reconnecting with a lot of those people and discovering that we really are the same as we were back then. We're just adult versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
I still play with bugs! So yeah, I would say that for me, it's a little bit unique in that I have that because I have that background where it's a small town. I was able to do that where I don't know that that's the norm. I think that's the exception to the rule. Because a lot of people don't maintain friendships from the sandbox.
Yeah.
And some people are stuck in the sandbox forever.
Yeah. Trying to find the kitty truffles.
I mean, and for me, like, I go back home. I grew up in Kansas City. Like I said, this little, super wealthy suburb. Which I was the poor kid, so that may have had part of something to do with like the shunnedness, but whichever. So, but like I go back for visits extremely rarely now that my mom's gone and my grandparents are gone. But when I do, it's like so many people have those same relationships. They live in the same area of town, whatever. But for me, like I moved to Midtown as soon as I could, and then I got the frick out as soon as I could because I was never gonna fit in there. Like, so I think maybe a lot of people are one or the other. Like, they either don't shift because that is their happy place. They were, those are those connections. But if you don't make those connections, then like
you're like a tumbleweed.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Until you find a place you stay.
So, Bo, what about you?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
About like that kind of like the friendships and relationships. I mean, you definitely have me and you have Dave. I suspect you may have more than that you just haven't discovered yet.
I kind of touched on that. Like it's rough because I have some very close relationships, but it's almost like it's this version of me that I haven't been in 3 years. Right?
Have you talked to these people though?
I work with them. I talk to them every day.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you actually talk to them.
Yeah, we're talking about
You may work communicate. I'm talking about
the people who actually know.
letting people in.
No, that's fair. And to be fair, no. If I'm being honest, those ones that know me, I pretty much did shut down from a personal standpoint in 2019 when I stopped traveling and had this realization.
That was kind of my point. Like, you have E and you have Dave, but I'm guessing you don't have many others that are consistent who actually know who you are.
No.
People that have seen behind the curtain to see who Oz actually is.
There is one other, but it's extremely unfair to put it all on my spouse. And that's essentially what has been happening, right? So basically, with love from Raina, she is very appreciative of the load that you're relieving with our rekindled friendship.
I'm glad. And I was going to say, is this a fair assessment? The people that have seen behind the curtain and know Bo are ones that have also met your wife and hung out with your wife and spent significant times with your wife and your kids, and because it's hard to hide who you are when you're with your immediate household.
One of them, but it was it was actually very tough to try to figure out how to get my wife and family in the same hemisphere as anybody I was working with. Honestly, my closest coworker is about 600 miles away. So my wife didn't really go on work trips too much with me because our kids were young, and it would mean bringing 3 kids on a work trip. So yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of crossover in personal and work life, which kind of fueled
and I think the only
everything we talked about.
I was going to say, I think the only reason that we had any kind of closeness was because we all lived in the same suburb. We all lived within just a few miles of each other, and we carpooled.
Exactly.
We
hung out outside of work. It wasn't just a work.
Yeah, we had common interests outside of work.
When essentially with this engineered bipolar thing, like, you having those separate groups being part of you is taken to the extremes, because your wife and your kids and those people who are that part of your life get one part of you, and the people who are your work relationships, your 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day while you're on the road, get a totally separate part of you, and rarely shall the twain meet during those years.
Right.
And this is the dangers of dealing with someone who can compartmentalize.
Absolutely.
Well, and think about this too. It also makes it, I don't want to get on the phone during personal time and talk to one of my work friends because I'm around my family. I can't be that person, So
you probably find it hard to connect with your family when you're being that other guy fully.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even us talking, we started talking, say, 4 weeks ago, you would probably have been a little bit beside yourself, like, I really want to talk to E, but this is my family time, I really can't. But now that you've read that book and you're starting to see, yeah, that was really kind of bad.
Well, look back in our chats to the last time we talked before that. It's pretty telling. I blew you off. It was I'll call you back, and then
never heard from him.
Exactly.
And I didn't take it personally. I just figured that your life was involved. We had shit going on, so like, I never took it personally. I take it personally now because you're an asshole, but I'm totally playing.
Honestly, we chatted a little bit. You seemed like you were doing fine, so
you didn't feel needed.
Bingo.
I think that's one of the dangers of the whole American work ethic and structure, because you essentially have this separation of who you are, and because we prioritize work over family, then
look at the Japanese of
rift.
Look at the Japanese from the 80s.
Yeah, and their suicide rates. And
we are a lesser version of it, but we're still on that path.
Exactly.
Because the Japanese of the 80s was work yourself to death. As long as your family is financially secure, who cares?
And study yourself to death when you're in school. Like, all of that. And we're heading in that direction. But so finding a place in your life and a work in your life where you can love what you do, or even somewhat integrate who you are with your job, I think will help that kind of like dual personality shit that happens.
And I mean, just looking at, like, I went through school and, I graduated mid-90s. I could tell you that a lot of times I would come home from school and I would start homework, and there were times I was finishing homework as my alarm clock was going off to go back to school. That was ridiculous. I could see it with my older kids that they also had times where, they were so inundated with homework. It was ridiculous. The school that my kids are going to now, they have a different philosophy. In kindergarten, you get 3 assignments per week, and they're like 10-minute assignments. My daughter's in 2nd grade. She gets 20 minutes of reading and 1 sheet for math. Her homework is done in a half an hour every night. And she is retaining so much more than my older kids did when they were inundated in 2nd grade, where they were doing 8 hours of homework a day.
My son, and I think part of this definitely has to do with his spectrum too. Like, at the beginning of the pandemic, when they were all being homeschooled, and his, all their school's version of quote unquote homeschool was shit. It was totally disorganized. It was dysfunctional, especially for the younger kids who couldn't read instructions. They couldn't work things on their own at all. So if your parents basically weren't there to help you with all of your school,
you were screwed
as a kid. Yeah. So pardon my F word.
Yeah. It went from I hate this program, No Child Left Behind. It was a dumbing down. I'm sorry, it was. I don't like getting political, but when it comes to children, I will get political if we have to. The pandemic will suddenly leave most of the kids behind, is what it felt like.
Yep. Well, and so we pulled him out middle of the way through, because basically the pandemic started kind of mid-year when they pulled kids out of school. So the second half of that last half, we moved him to a school that does all online. They actually specialize in overseas, but they're also licensed through the state, and it's like American. But anyway, so and my kid like blasts through all of it. He spends like maybe an hour, 2 hours a day doing school. But even in the beginning, it was halfway through his 2nd grade. He had such a hard time with reading. He really couldn't do it. And then by the end of the 2nd grade, he was reading everything he could get his hands on. And he's doing so well now. He's been on the dean's list every year since then. Like, so even just in that little amount of time, him being able to focus and on just that, like you said, he's retaining so much more. He's doing so much better than he was when he had all this coming at him.
So, excuse me. Yeah, the pandemic was really rough. So, I had 3 kids dealing with school. My oldest was a senior that year, so she basically lost all her senior shit, right? And
no prom, homecoming wasn't the same.
No
that
graduation.
That was such bullshit. I'm sorry. That still pisses me off.
Right.
Well, and also you're already got seniors kind of, their academics are only half-assed because they're on their way out. So she probably had nothing.
They have senioritis.
That last year. Yeah.
Yeah, basically their years ended in March, really.
Yeah.
And what really for her, not to stick on this because this isn't where I was going, but we were also supposed to go on her choir trip to Anaheim, and they canceled it 2 days before because that's when everything shut down. So it was like that was the first. Yeah, so it sucked. But it didn't academically really affect her because it was senior year. They're kind of in shutdown mode anyway. My next one was
good luck getting a senior to actually pay attention. Just saying.
My next was a freshman,
Yeah.
and she did okay actually with kind of doing it from home. It took some adjustment, but it's interesting because where some will really struggle, others will thrive in that altered, environment. My youngest, my son, though, just could not. It
How old
there
is
was
he?
so he was seventh grade that year.
He was still old enough to do the self direction. It just that part was really difficult for him.
He had a rough going. So he's my two youngest are on the spectrum, very different, and they're about as opposite as they could be. Because if you've met one person on the spectrum, you've met one person on the spectrum. Because
Yeah,
yeah,
my son's dad is also on the spectrum, but they present so much differently. Like I always think that he should be able to help with the like knowing what's going on with him part, and he's like, I really don't because it was so different for me.
right, right. So my son though just could not. He'd already had a rough go with the last few years. We were working through IEPs and 504s and trying to get the school to just kind of
That in itself
adapt
is
a
hell.
little bit to, help him learn the way he did because it's the redundancy that he just couldn't. And if it looked like it was pointless, like how is this useful? He really couldn't wrap his head around it. But he was coding at in seventh grade. The kid's bright. So he ended up going through pandemic from home. Then because we didn't move, but they opened a new junior high, he had to move to a second junior high. So now we're in the third school in 3 years.
Ugh.
And he is failing everything. We
Mm.
cannot get we are spending 8 hours a night with him sitting there trying to do homework to get one thing turned in. And it's just impossible to get him engaged.
Well, and schedule and structure is so important in different ways to people on the spectrum, but it's so important to people on the
I
spectrum.
mean,
So for him, it sounds like that was his coping mechanism was that structure.
Well, it gets kind of it's interesting where this goes because long story short, he absolutely fails uh seventh grade. He's going to have to repeat seventh grade. We know this as of about probably a good month before the year's over. Um,
Mm.
and he's
Was
got a
he
lot
doing
of
okay before that?
no. He's been like I said, he's been falling further and further behind,
Okay.
despite us basically almost working between my wife and I good 8 hours a day trying to reinforce. It just then there's nothing happening. So we find out about this new school that's opening up, and it's the second one, and it's actually a six through 12, and it's a charter school that has a completely unraveled curriculum. They have like 8 pillars that they teach across, and all of those pillars represent a local in the local area need across technology, agriculture, medicine, so like sports medicine, nursing, that type of stuff. They have these
That's
eight different
fascinating.
tracks. Now, what's really cool is in junior high, they spend like 5 weeks on each track. So my son just finished medical. That was what they finished in their first track, and he learned lots of stuff. He learned how to take blood pressures and basic stuff like that. All of the math and all of the English, all of the science for that 5 weeks is directly related to the subject, medical healthcare. Okay. It gets even better. You guys are both tech. When they go in and start doing software coding and they do that segment, their English assignments are writing design documents.
Syntax and everything's context is so important, and context is missing in the American education system.
Well, here's the interesting thing. So my son, it was kind of he would tell us now the last 3 years we couldn't get him to tell us what happened at school. I felt like he went into a time vortex and he came out and I'm like, what did you eat lunch? I don't know. Like he do, I swear, I don't know what this kid did for 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
So he just started his new segment, and right now they're working on criminal. They're doing basically like public safety. So they're doing fire, dispatch, police. And so he came home yesterday, and he's telling me all these details about how handcuffs work, and how he learned how to properly handcuff someone, and how to be properly handcuffed, and how to do this with the. And he's telling me all this stuff, and then he started telling me how it relates to the healthcare stuff that he learned 3 weeks ago, and this and that, and talking about this paper that he wrote, and I'm like,
That's awesome.
This is amazing.
this was a
A 180.
complete flip from 6 months ago when we're like, he can't tell us what happened, and now he's like excited and telling us about it, and it's so relevant, and it's like, I don't know, I love talking about it because it's so different from any other school.
Have you been able to gather anything by his interest in what he talked about? Like, is he into like the procedure of it, or the
He sounds like he's
engineering of it?
He sounds like he's very detail, technically oriented when he's talking about how handcuffs work.
Yeah,
that's very mechanical.
Or the
he's describing the
mechanics,
pins and stuff. Yeah, it's so, and that's the stuff
awesome.
that he keeps in on. He's like very much has a engineering mindset. I don't know
Yes,
if that's going to
it's
present
engineering,
itself
that's the word I was
in like
looking
a
for.
software engineering or more of a hardware engineering.
Yeah, like
that's
you
how
said,
his
it
mind
sounds
works.
mechanical.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your school's very ROP oriented.
Well, it's interesting because like there is a segment where they do construction, right? And they go in, they learn how to weld. They learn. I mean, they hand
awesome.
they hand 8th and 9th graders welders and let them weld.
Welding's fun. I'm just saying.
Amazing.
I did welding in high school. I loved it. But they build stuff, and then they build stuff and donate it to like local areas. But what gets really cool is they basically drop off. So I told you there's 8 tracks, right? So every year the kids get to decide which one do they like the least. And then those other ones they basically spend an extra week on, right? Each year on those, and they get more focus. And
They
then
become specialized.
they keep whittling down by
That's amazing.
by junior year. They are working towards industry certifications because the money that is normally allocated for like dual credit college credit is reallocated to industry certifications or whatever
That
is
is
applicable.
amazing.
Well,
Yep.
and that's what I was saying. Like context and all of these things are missing from our education system because and it sounds like they're building well-rounded people because he's tying those things in.
Let's face
where
it.
normally they wouldn't be.
Let's face it. Traditional education is teaching kids to respond to the factory whistle to move from one station to the next, regurgitate what they're told, and go into the chain of now you're going to go into college and you're going to rack up a bunch of debt. That's what it's become.
It has its own syntax with the formatting that everything has to be in,
and I mean, go to a school counselor at any traditional public school and talk about trade school and watch the sneer.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sorry, there is such a need for trades right now that my kids could go ahead, apply for a job that they are not qualified for, get the job, be paid an hourly rate while they're getting their education done for tech school or their trade school, paid for by the company under the condition you work for us for 1, 2, 3, 5 years to pay back the investment.
Well, not just that, talking about no kid left behind, like so many kids are left behind with their current educational system because the format and the teaching is so specific, so there's no way for a lot of kids
you don't
to
engage the
identify
minds
themselves in that. Exactly. They don't identify themselves with anything that they're
It's like,
learning.
It sounds great, but let's face it. What it is if one kid decides to be lazy, every kid in that class in that cohort suffers because they are held down to that one kid that wants to be lazy. And that if it's a kid that's being
have
lazy.
a whole show on like education and how it affects kids and all that. Like,
hey, Brandy, we need you for this.
So Sarah, check this out. I know you can appreciate this. So we had our IEP/504 meeting with the special education director at this new school. This was, about a month and a half ago, right before school started. And so you've
been through this before, right? Because you have multiple kids on the spectrum.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, this is a down pat, and my wife and I are everyone because we got to have each other's back on this shit. Because yeah. So
I mean, it's your kids.
Yeah, and kids.
Well, and it sounds like in his school you're
yeah.
going in for battle, and that is really school dependent. Because sometimes with our kid, we didn't even realize we were actually looking out for it. Because, like I said, his dad was on the spectrum, but we didn't realize how much adjusting they were already doing in the school just to have him be functional there and the other kids to be functional with him. His dad cried and had to leave the room through that IEP meeting because he had no idea, like he saw himself in all those struggles, everything they were going down the list. It's heartbreaking. But it sounds like you guys were in a school that didn't have that level of care or whatever, so you had to go into battle at this meeting.
Well, think about it this way. So we have not moved since before my son was born, yet he has gone to 2 elementary schools and now 3 junior highs. 3 years of junior high. Okay. 2 new schools. The area we're in is blowing up, and we have new schools opening. Yeah. So a new elementary and a new junior high opened up literally like 4 blocks away. So he goes to junior high. New school opens up there. Well, that's the junior high where they failed him. So now he's in a 3rd one where he's thriving.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's so school dependent. It's crazy.
But where I was going with this is, you really have to build a relationship up with them. And jumping from school to school to school, they don't know your kid, and you don't have the relationship with the team essentially, and it made it impossible.
And so you don't know until it's too late, almost, if they're being supported or not.
Right, because you're like, and I've been through this with my other kid, and that kid had one elementary school, 1 junior high school, and she's graduating from the 1 high school, right? It's totally different experience with her. Similar diagnosis, very different kid, very different situation with the schools. Where I was going with this, though, that I thought you'd appreciate. So we sit down with the special education director, and she's going through the IEP, and she goes, okay. And she goes, well, I don't really see anything we really need to take care of here. She goes, I mean, I can put an IEP on file if you want. And she's like, so everything I'm seeing here is what I would consider good teaching and what should be done for all kids. And it was like,
wow. Okay, if you live in a cookie cutter world, sure.
They are doing it, and it's crazy what goes. My son takes his bearded dragon to school with him. Okay,
that's awesome.
Because why not? Because you know what? It's comforting for him. He sits there inside of his sweater, puts it in here, and really nobody knows. He just chills there, and he has a carrier that he can put him in for lunch, so he's everything's sanitary.
So he's got his support animal.
Yeah, and the school's like, why not? Because if that helps him be comfortable, then
that's awesome.
The type of shit I'm talking about.
That's awesome.
How can you imagine trying to get an accommodation for that in a public school?
Oh no.
What's the
Well,
there has to
even
be a
try.
name for this education structure. It can't just be the school. Do you know what that 8 pillars and all that stuff is called? What they're doing?
I can give. So right now, this is the 2nd school. They opened the first one about 6 years ago, I think.
Oh yeah, you said it's a charter, right?
Yeah, it's a charter, and this is their 2nd charter. I can get some information on the school. I can probably get their charter, and I can post it out in the Discord. So,
and I just did a search quick for 8 Pillars Education. There's the Forte Academy, 8 Pillars of Education. Our 8 Pillars of Education. Like, there's all these different schools that follow this 8-pillar model. There's a lot of schools that do it. I'm just scrolling through it. It's just school after school after school after school.
Well, and the thing is, we had to win a lottery to get my son in there. And it was so stressful because he's failing. What are we going to do? We're waiting to see if we win a lottery.
Ooh.
And then all of a sudden his whole life changes for the better.
Because of luck.
And you guys didn't have to spend $40,000 a year to put him into private school to get there.
Right.
And where I want to throw in really fast is my exact smack in the middle daughter. She was struggling with public school. We tried doing the K-12 online, which she fell a year behind. Then we went to a charter school that was a arts-centric charter school. She was there for a year and a half, and she went from being a year behind to graduating with honors. On time.
That's amazing. And really, I think what that boils down to is being understood. Like, the inclusiveness of having your particular learning style or who you are, like with your son's case, taking from Bearded Dragon, like
now,
having something that makes you understood where you can thrive.
I do have to put out a word of warning. Not all charter schools are created equal. There are some horrific grifting charter schools. Though, if your charter school bounces between districts constantly, that's a grifter.
Yeah.
That is a grift.
I didn't even know that was a thing with schools.
Oh yeah, for charter. Oh, yeah, one of my best friends. Also from the same job, but Bo and Dave did not get to work with him. He left, and then they came in. But his wife was looking at putting, or his ex-wife was looking at putting their son into a charter school, but the charter school that they were looking at, that she was going for, was one of those ones that every 2 years they moved districts. They never moved physical location, they just jumped districts because it was a grift. The kids that graduated from there graduated with zero skills whatsoever. They would have flunked in any school otherwise. But like the school that my daughter went to, I mean, like I said, went from a year behind to graduating on time with honors, and got and the teachers put together scholarships, and my daughter, she won one of them, and they were arts specific. So she went there. She only went there like 3 days a week. The other 2 days a week, was work from home. But she went there because of the piano lessons more than anything. But that was the hook that got her in. And then it's like all the students that were there. It's like at public school, you have a lot of students that have no interest in learning. They're there because they have to be. At this charter school, every student that was there wanted to be there and was there to learn. And just being in that environment has a way of lifting up everyone around you. Mm-hmm. So, like, we may be singing the praises of charter schools, but you got to be careful. You have to do your homework on your charter school before you go for it. And the nice thing is about here in California is that with most of the charter schools, they're funded by public funds. Mm-hmm. So it gets rerouted from the public school to the charter school.
Yeah,
which is nice.
They abide by a charter that they get to write rather than a state curriculum.
Yep,
that's the difference.
We actually had trouble with that during the pandemic, though, because they stopped covering schools like the school my son goes to that specialize in online education. They stopped allowing funds to go to those schools, even though it was K-12, accredited, because the public schools were then putting in their own shittier version of remote learning. So I have to pay for my son's, even though it's an accredited K-12.
And I mean, I'm going to throw this out there again. I don't really like being political, but when it comes to kids, it's got to be okay. Bo knows I'm a political monster. I really am. But for this podcast, I don't like being political. I like having an area where I don't have politics ruling everything. But
I don't even know how you shut that shit off.
Yeah, compartmentalization. Anyway, school choice should be. We need it. We need parents being able to say, "I want my kid to go to this school," not be, "You live in this area, so your kid has to go to the school." That is, I mean, look at the inner city schools. They are garbage more often than not because it's low income. Low income does not get a lot of taxes. Not a lot of taxes means not a lot of funding going to the school. Not a lot of funding going to the school means you get shit teachers that don't really care that much with kids that don't really care because nobody cares. Nobody cares. No parent wants their kid to go to that. Get rid of tenureship. I'm sorry. Don't tenure teachers. You should be competing for your job every year. Every year.
Well, and then they do things like, they did during the pandemic, restarting school without like proper precautions. So even the conscientious teachers, the ones who will come out of their own pocket for supplies every year, started quitting. Like we had this mass exodus of good teachers.
Exactly. And I mean, if you have school choice, a voucher system, waiver system, whatever you want, parents get their kids to go to the good schools. The good schools get a lot more funding. They get more funding, they get better teachers. They get better teachers, they have better curriculum, better programs, better extracurriculars, better everything. The bad schools can freaking die. Let them.
Nightcat.
You can get better, and then if a school dies, guess what? Well, if you really need a school in that area, you're going to have to figure out how to get yourself to be appealing to parents to want them to have your kids go there. Some schools,
take those educational models and you move them out into the less funded schools.
Exactly.
Those are the ones that get left behind.
Exactly. And unfortunately, I just got a word. I have to get rid of my cat tomorrow.
Oh no!
What?
We've been dealing with behavioral issues since we got him. And we've tried everything. We've tried everything. We've left no stone unturned. He's still peeing and pooping away from litter boxes. We have pristine litter boxes. We have multiple litter boxes. We have gone through different litter systems. We've tried all sorts of stuff. We've tried calming collars. We've tried pheromone diffusers. We've tried everything. And my cat's still just, so.
You have multiple cats?
2. And they're really good friends. And this cat, he gives me hugs every morning.
Oh.
He is a part of my soul, and we have to get rid of him.
You're going to make me cry. I'm so sorry. That's horrible. You know what, though? Whatever it is in his situation,
he's not happy.
Yeah, and he will be somewhere else if whatever it is he can't be that comfortable there. Then
the thing is,
I'm so sorry.
As a general rule, I hate cats. This cat has the soul of a dog.
Always had cats.
No,
known you.
Yeah, we got Juliet from Dave.
Okay.
And that was only because the other option was Juliet goes to an animal shelter, and old cats don't get adopted.
Yeah.
I'm not a cat
Same
person.
with old dogs, and those are my preference. Actually, I prefer the older animals.
I'm a dog person through and through, and like I said, this cat has the soul of a dog. I go to the bathroom, the cat jumps up on the counter next to me and reaches over and gives me a hug. As a matter of fact, there's a picture that my wife sent me of him giving me a hug. I'm going to send to the group chat. And I'm going to send the bow. Damn it. Yeah, so this is a hell of a way to end an episode.
Right.
Trying to hold my shit together.
I'm so sorry.
He's named Ryuk, as in the Shinigami from Death Note. For a reason. He is my Shinigami. He is my... Yeah. This is shitty.
That's adorable.
How many cats do you see do that?
We've got one about that fluffy that's orange.
He's never lost a fight because of how fluffy he is.
Yeah.
And the thing is that when he was an indoor-outdoor cat, he was his happiest, but he's pitch black. We have a street here that has no street lights, no speed bumps, and people blast through the stop sign without caring, and he crosses the street. The last thing I want is to be taking my kids to school and finding the cat flattened out like a pizza on the street.
Yeah.
Is he Maine Coon?
No. He looks big, but he's not Maine Coon.
Okay.
Well, but it's the fur. It's that like lion's mane stick out part that makes him look like that.
Yeah. Because ours is.
Yeah, so I'm trying not to cry.
Sorry, man. You got somebody that's able to take him on?
No, I have to bring him back to the shelter that we got him from. Fortunately, it's a no-kill. It's a cat rescue. So he's got to get the love and attention that he deserves. And when we got him, he was only a year old.
Well, and I actually like that about shelters. I used to do a St. Bernard rescue, and it's, benefit for him going if you got him from somewhere that requires you to bring them back. If you don't keep them, that means that they really care about where they go, and they're going to make sure that, that they're happy.
Anyway.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah. Well, let's just kill the mood here. So, yeah, one thing I said, Sarah heard it, and I'm going to share it to the rest of the co-hosts and everyone involved in this podcast. Going forward, we do have a shared calendar. Contact info for the guests should be in the shared calendar. That way I can send invites directly to them as opposed to having to relay it, because that's kind of what happened this week, is that it was supposed to be relayed and the person that scheduled them is not available right now, so was unable to send out the invite to them. So, yeah. Sometimes you discover that you need to fix a problem only once it becomes a problem.
Yeah, you know what? I think this turned out to be a really good episode, though. Like, we touched on a lot of things. I think Bo should be on more.
Well, Bo will be on for the disassociation episode.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, no, I'd definitely love to have you guys on more. I would love to have everybody on more.
Right. Maybe we should do like a rotating co-host kind of thing.
Yeah, that'd be fun to try to schedule. It's hard enough to get guests scheduled.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's fair. And you wouldn't find out until right before who's going to be his co-host. We just kind of all like draw straws and jump in on you.
Right. Be like, yeah, so this is, welcome to Am I Mental? I'm your host, E, and with us tonight is, let's see, we've got to spin the wheel.
Hello.
Round and round we go. Who will co-host? Nobody knows.
Co-host roulette.
Right.
Wait a minute. 000 Black? What's that?
That's your on your own.
Had to do that before. Not a big deal, though. Anyway, so, yeah, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We will be starting at 5 Pacific on Saturday, starting next season. We haven't determined when the season start yet. I just have to look at the calendar and be like, okay, so here's where we end, and here's probably, I'm thinking, probably the first Saturday in December. That way we get through. Oh God, no, because that's. We'll skip Christmas Eve, and we'll skip New Year's Eve. We'll just skip those two, and then we'll just pile them on later. Because I'm not going to have episodes on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. Everybody's going to be gone and busy.
Yeah,
or drunk.
Definitely should be.
Yeah. So yeah, we're going to be moving the podcast start time and all that Yeah. And in the meantime, I got to try to make arrangements for my cat. Anyway, until next week, I'm E. Come on, Sarah.
Bye.
All right. Let's see. All right, Bo. Catch you guys next time.